So we're expecting Ohio State's offensive line to be as healthy as it's been all season. Ryan Day, when asked about Donovan Jackson, he's ready to roll. They wanted him to have a full week of practice before getting him back into action. Now we're expecting him to make his debut when Ohio State plays Marshall. I'm Stephen Means. That's Andrew Gillis, and that's Stefan Krajisnik. Stefan, how big of a deal is it for Donovan Jackson to be back for this offensive line?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal, especially this week, to get him back because he can get, we've talked about it so much, that accurate game, kind of how sluggish, I guess, the offensive line looked early on and how much they needed to kind of gel to play together. Now you get a chance to get Donovan Jackson back before you get to Big Ten play, right? So you can work out some things, maybe some rust against Marshall, maybe if there are some things to work out against Michigan State before you face Iowa. So I think it's important that they get him back early. And, we talked about it this year for all the questions on maybe what the offensive line would look like. He was a guy that we had no questions about. I mean, he's an All-American candidate. I think The Athletic had him as a preseason first or second team All-American. So we know what Donovan Jackson brings to Ohio State. So you really can't overstate how important it is to have him back and have him back this early.
Andrew, I thought something else that was interesting that Ryan Day got asked about, because he got asked, is Tegra officially the starting right guard after there was a bit of a battle the first 2 weeks of the season? And he said yes, Tegra is the right guard, but he didn't say Carson Hinsman's name next. He went with Austin Siereveld and saying, hey, he's done some good things, and we got to find a way to get him on the field. It might not be that Bison role, but are you kind of shocked by that maybe Austin Siereveld's making a play here where he's the next guy up on the interior?
No, because I think the shock would have come, I believe it was last week when we talked to Ryan Day, where he said, Austin Siereveld has played well enough to find his way into that rotation, or whatever turn of phrase he used. That was kind of the news to me back then, where when you talk about Austin Siereveld, I think that they looked at those first two games and went, played really well against Akron, or played well enough against Akron, played well enough against Western Michigan. We feel comfortable with him. They were able to rotate in some guys in those two games. I mean, especially when the score gets out of hand like it did against Western Michigan, you're able to do that. But I think that they just looked at Siereveld and went, oh, we have this guy now. We have this option now. And that's going to be really important because, as we just saw with Donovan Jackson, I don't know, what the specifics of the injury was. I don't think anybody really does. I don't think anybody really is going to look at Donovan Jackson and say, like, this was weird, but I don't know if this would happen if they played Iowa, with Oregon back-to-back. Would he have been in the lineup? Maybe, but you're going to have injuries the rest of the way. Like, somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to tweak something, and they're not going to be able to go against Nebraska, against Penn State, against Oregon, against whoever, against Michigan in the playoff. And you got to have those guys lined up, and I think having Siereveld step up like he has is a really big benefit because we knew that they had Hinsman. We knew that they had some depth there. But now you have Siereveld in that mix. You have Montgomery there. I think you have to kind of like where they're at, especially on the interior.
Unintended benefit was getting Austin Siereveld and building some depth there. To your point of would they have done this if they were playing Iowa or Michigan State to start the season with Donovan Jackson have played? I think the answer is no, and I would have said yes before we talked with Ryan Day on Tuesday about some of this. And it's because of something that got asked. How much of what happened with Jackson Smith-Njigba in 2022, where he got hurt the first game of the season, and then they slow played him back, but then maybe it felt like they rushed him to get back at some times. He came back against Toledo and was immediately knocked out for another maybe couple of weeks there. Comes back against Iowa, gets knocked out essentially for the rest of the season there. And Ryan Day said something, this is not a direct quote, but just you learn from your experience. And I do wonder how much of that 2022 season with what happened with Jackson Smith-Njigba, what happened with Mayan Williams, what happened with Travion Henderson, where that kind of went awry and almost led to him maybe not even being in this program anymore, the way that was handled. How has that changed the way they have approached injuries going forward, especially these lingering, potentially soft tissue injuries where it kind of takes a while for guys to get back? And I am wondering that. I just a lot of insight from Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and Will Howard. Get to text 614-350-3315. Ohio State's offensive line expected to be fully healthy when they play Marshall on Saturday. We'll continue to talk about this on Buckeye Talk. Go listen to that wherever you find podcasts. I'm Steven. He's Andrew. And he's Stefan. We're out of here.